This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Between two-factor authentication, strong passwords, and a VPN, you try to be in control of how your info is protected. But many other places also have it, and they might not be as careful. That's why LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats. If your identity is stolen, they'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/podcast for 40% off. Terms apply. This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
Now what I try to tell coaches and help them get to understand is watching game film and grading game film is like trying to go to a crime scene and solve the crime. Some crime scenes have a ton of evidence, right? You have the fingerprints, you have the footprints, you have the murder weapon, and you know exactly what the perp did and who did it. And the crime solved. That's like watching a defense from scout film against an offense just like yours with similar personnel, right? That's the perfect world.
All right, today on the Coaching Coordinator Podcast, we're going to get into film study. And I don't know that we've ever talked about this on the podcast in detail of how you watch film. And when you think about it, it's something that, I don't know, in doing all these clinics and doing all these courses, there was really nothing out there until now, of course, with what Dub Maddox has put together. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So Dub Maddox is the master of creating frameworks that accelerate everything, whatever that might be, especially the way that we do works.
Shopping is hard.
I can never find anything in my size.
I don't even know my size.
I buy my clothes the same place I buy my groceries.
There's a better way. Make it easy with Stitch Fix. Just share your size, style, budget, and done. Your personal stylist sends pieces picked just for you.
That was easy.
Stitch Fix. Online personal styling for everyone. Free shipping and returns. No subscription required. Get started today at stitchfix.com.
So Dub, it's great to have you back here. Always good when you have something new to share on the podcast with our listeners.
Thanks, Keith, for having me on. Great to reconnect again today.
So Dub, talk to us about the premise behind this and where this came about for you.
Yeah, it really goes back to my first year coaching many years ago and being in my first game plan meeting. And if you can remember your first game plan meeting, Keith, it was being stuck in a room and probably like me, we've got a giant TV seat buckled onto a cart with four wheels with a VCR, and one coach was in charge of running the cowboy clicker, and he's going back and forth for minutes, and we're all sitting there, and coaches are calling out things, calling out these terms I've never heard before. Everybody's giving play suggestions, and it was like I was in a foreign country all of a sudden, and I was like, I had no idea what I was looking at and what was going on. So we were in there for 3 hours. We come out, my head spinning. And so I asked one of the coaches kind of shyly, I was like, hey, can you walk me through some of like what you're seeing and how you're able to identify these things? And he said, sure. So the next day we get in the film room and he tries to walk me through what he's watching when he looks at game film. It was disappointing because while he was an expert at watching film, the veteran coach, he could not distill that information, his process to me. And I didn't know it until, years later why, but I was really frustrated because I felt like, well, there is no hope. There is nowhere to go to learn how to watch film. And I feel like I wasted 5 to 10 years of my career before I finally figured out a process. And I feel like that's where a lot of coaches are. And then you take that and talk about what are your players doing to know how to watch film? It gets even more scary. How many times have you had, every coach listening's had this situation. Oh man, little Timmy, I got on Huddle to check his film watch, 87 hours of Huddle film this week. He's going to crush it this week. And you're jacked up because your quarterback's logged 87 hours because he's left it on running. He knows how to beat the system. And then he gets in the game, he doesn't know where to go with the football. He's throwing picks left and right. And you're just like, I don't get it. He was watching film. And so my goal was, I've got to figure out a way to take what these expert coaches have learned innately over years and build a bridge to distill it down into a process that can be replicated and taught. And that was my goal for years. And I felt like finally that we have something to offer guys to help with that.
I know you see it even at the highest levels. And so, one name that's been out there and been talked about, Caleb Williams, right? And I think you've had the opportunity to cross paths with Caleb and the coaches who have worked with him, but not having that system that really makes them feel comfortable in how I watch film, how I break it down, and what I carry with me into the game is something you see even out of some of the best players at the highest level.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough this offseason to spend time with a lot of high level programs and quarterbacks and really got a peek behind the curtain. And anytime I'm around a high caliber coach or a player, I'm asking them a million questions. I'm just trying to mine them for information. And I was blown away at just the lack of foundational support these quarterbacks are given at the highest levels to know what to look for, to have a process of watching film. And it was shocking to me. And so I think this is something that, again, inspired me to get this out is because, people need it.
With what you do, and people have seen this evolve with you over time, starting with R4 passing game concepts and then turning it into a process for game planning and, all the books that you've written. Now you have a framework really that, as we said, works to accelerate everything. Accelerate understanding, but also accelerate your time as a coach to get you the answers that you need to put together your game plan instead of slaving over every clip of film that you have for an ungodly amount of hours. There's things that you can now, as you said it before we got going, look at some of the micro patterns that are developing to really understand the team that you're facing much better than whatever their structures that they're running.
Yeah, so it's like I want to find, okay, what's the best way? I always want to make sure whatever I'm doing it the best way. Well, what's the best way to watch film? What's the best way to game plan? You ask 10 different coaches, you'll get 10 different answers. Over the last 25 years of my coaching career, I've tried them all. And I just felt like there's a better way. Well, a lot of times when you get a roadblock, you've got to look outside your domain. And so I started looking at industries like the military. You look at other industries, soccer, other sports. You'll look at industries like cooking and chefs. There's all kinds of things you can look at to glean patterns that they've cracked that can help you crack your pattern that you're struggling with. And so that's really, R4 was built on the best practices from all these domains. And the key is identifying the non-negotiable patterns within your environment. And that's the first thing that we do. And then establishing a common language that's specific with a brevity code, because you got to say a lot with a little when you're making rapid decisions under pressure. And you have to put that into a streamlined process. And that's what we've done with the game planning process and the watching game film and the way we teach quarterbacks how to read post snap.
Yeah, let's dig into this a little bit more so coaches have an understanding of what you put together and how this works. And we'll share all the information on how they can get into, dig into the things you've put together at the end of the episode. Film watching mastery here is what you put together into a course and then some tools along with it. For our listeners out there, I guess, to give them a good picture of what this is and how it worked for them, go ahead and explain kind of the starting point of what you're looking at.
Yeah, the first thing that you have to do, and this is about your foundational setup. Let's say we're offensive coordinator or head coach of a program. We have to establish the foundational language and structures of what I call the defensive caps. And I'm going to talk from an offensive perspective here. So we have to map the cap, essentially, because the defense is trying to cap space. We're trying to uncap it. So what is cap? It's an acronym. We've now elongated to caps. It's coverage, alignment, which is the front. It's pressure and stunts. That's the four things we've got to evaluate from a film perspective. But we have to have a organizational process to show the relationships and the rules of all the different ways that they can play coverage and fronts and pressures and stunts. So you have to establish essentially a glossary or a framework first. And I use the 5-family framework because if you take your hand, for example, okay, there's 5 fingers in your hand. And if you look at the index finger and middle finger, those 2 fingers are essentially connected by the same tendon. You move one, the other moves. There's a relationship between those. Same for your pinky and your ring. The thumb is a standalone. And so based on that 5-family framework, we could look at other things and find the same pattern. That's how I organize my coverage families, my front families, my pressure families, and stunt families. And so, for example, you have 0-1 base coverage families. Let's get real elementary here. 0-1's man. There's a relationship there. That's like your index and middle finger. One protects the other. If the defense is getting beat with cover 0 down the middle, what are they going to do to protect that weakness? They're going to play cover 1 if they still want to bring pressure. So you have to set your framework up where you can teach it to coaches and players and they understand the why behind the coverage call and how to recognize it. That's where you got to start before you even turn on the film. Okay. So again, you got 2 and 3. That's like the ring finger, pinky finger. There's a relationship there. One protects the other. And then 4 is standalone. There's all different variations of quarters, right? You could play just quarters and have different rules and tags within it, and you could defend the entire season with it. That's how we break down. So there's patterns with that, with fronts, with pressures, with stunts. I mean, I've spent years putting this on our website on how we break all that down. But again, you as a coach have to have a framework to teach how you're going to identify and classify the rules and relationships of those four things. Now, once that's done, then we can turn on the film and start to now watch film and identify, is it cover two? Is it two Tampa? Is it three cloud field? You can go through all that. But that's the first layer. That was good for many, many years. About 10 years ago, things changed. Just because I saw cover three doesn't mean that the defense is going to play cover three like I anticipate. Are they playing with divider leverage? Are they taking away the seams? Is that corner playing below the hard deck? He may be taught to defend the deep third, but in the film I'm watching, in reality, he's not in position to do that. So I've got to learn how to read the reality of what I'm actually seeing in the post-snap world instead of the whiteboard world. So in order to read the reality, we have to have frames of reference in order to see the patterns of movements pre and post snap. So we use the HALO for that. The HALO is an acronym that establishes 4 key frames. Hard deck, right? That reveals the 5 vertical tubes above it. Apex, that's the midpoint between the end man of the line of scrimmage and the next eligible receiver, which frames out the box and route space outside. The line of center, which divides the formation into 2, so it helps me see where man advantage is in my favor and is not. And then the outside space, which is the flat, which is the first part we need to game plan to see if we have an easy flat throw. So again, we have to have frames of reference to read the reality of what we're seeing, because we can't trust anymore what we see pre-snap. I watched a video today of Cooper Kupp in a podcast, and he is talking about in the last 5 years in the NFL, defense has changed drastically. You cannot trust what you see anymore pre-snap. Everything is post-snap, and it's hybrids and it's mixtures of all the things that you were taught 15 years ago. So if you don't live in a sub-second world and you're not able to process micro-pattern movements in a sub-second world and understand coverage in a deeper level, you're going to be dead. Like, it's trickled down, Keith, to our league at high school. Like, of the top 8 to 10 teams in our league last year, it's all 3 safety or 5 across, and everything is post-snap movements. And if your quarterback doesn't have frames of reference and a language and a system to understand what that means, he's dead. And we're crushing records. I mean, we broke 13 school records at Union in the last 3 years, and most of those are passing. These are records that haven't been broken in 25 years because it's a powerhouse program. But we were able to shatter them because we're reading on a whole nother level using this process.
Yeah, for sure. And had the opportunity to watch you guys in person this last fall and was just impressed what I could see come to life are all the things that I've heard you talk about, that I've read about in your books, about getting players and coaches on the same page. Like, literally could see, I hear the guy, I'm up in the box, I hear the guys talking about what's going on and see the players reacting on the field and adjusting a split, for example, because that's what they need to do to win on a certain route. And damn if it didn't work. And, I'm watching the sideline, nobody's screaming at them to do it. They're just doing it on their own, right? So this is about getting everybody to see the game in a similar framework too. And in some ways, it is because you have a process for it, but also because it's simple enough for them to understand, communicate, and play within. We're not talking about, with the things that you do. I think maybe if somebody looks on the surface level might think this is extremely complex, but when you have the understanding of it, it really makes everything easier for you to understand this is where the football needs to go. This is how we're going to attack this, certain coverage or certain front or whatever it might be. But as you said, like, within that, you can't just count on seeing the structure anymore and making the decision on there. You have to understand, as you said, the micro patterns in between, the behaviors of certain players, and trust it. And with what you've done with this process is you really don't need to say, well, I need 20 clips of this to confirm it. You're going to be able to see those things in a relatively short amount of time, in 3 to 5 clips even.
Yeah, it's really a simple process. And what I want to teach the coaches on our staff, and then really I want to get it to our players, and I can go in more depth how we do that, but it's how do we get them to quickly evaluate the patterns that matter most? And so what we do is we don't watch film. That's passive. We grade it.
Mm-hmm.
And so once you get all of your huddle input and your data input down a distance, here's the coverages, here's the fronts, once you get, now you start sorting and you're finding patterns within the like coverages that you're seeing on film. So let's pull up all the cover ones if we have cover one. And we're going to go through and we're going to find routes that attack a specific defender. And just because the quarterback's not throwing at a specific receiver doesn't mean you can't glean information from that. All right. And so we're going to use that grading card and we're going to grade the non-negotiables of coverage. This is the post-snap world. And there's 4 non-negotiables in the post-snap world. It's the coverage of a defender. It's his dominant position in relation to the outside space of the receiver. So you're going to stop the play at the last step of the quarterback's drop. All right. So from the time the ball snapped to the last step of the quarterback's drop, right, we're going to pause the film. What's the dominant position of the receiver? Is he over and inside, over and outside, under and inside, under and outside? That's only 4 positions he could be, right? That tells me a leverage strength and a leverage weakness. Then we got to look a layer deeper. What's his angle of his hips? Are they square? Are they fully turned to the end zone? Does he have a zone hip angle with his eyes in on the cue? Or is it a man hip angle with his hips to the sideline looking at the receiver? That goes a layer deeper of the intent and the reality of space he can close on at that given time. So down just those 2 things, dominant position and hip angle, I can now start eliminating route options and I can confirm the best one on the rhythm phase. That's the first layer. And if you just stop there, that's a lot. But we got to go a layer deeper. The next thing is that a defender can only be one of 2 things, Keith, post-snap. He's a cushion or collision player. He cannot be both. That's the weapon they're using to take the quarterback's decision-making and delay and disrupting it. So I'm going to use that against him. So if he's a collision guy, I'm going to grade his collision. If he's collisioning the receiver before the rhythm phase expires, that's positive collision. If he's attempting to collision, but yet the receiver is able to avoid it, that might be neutral. And if there is no collision at all, that's negative, right? So we're going to give a grade for that. In few clips, I can know how he's trying to take that route out. And I can now tell my quarterback, right, if you see this or feel this to your eyes, get off, or we can talk to our receiver coach. We've got to have a strategy in play this week to avoid this collision technique. Otherwise, every scheme we run is dead, right? If he's not a collision player, he's a cushion player. So what's that mean? He's trying to maintain a certain level of threshold of cushion to delay the decision. So we use the 4-yard rule as our metric. If a defensive back is at 4 yards at the last step of the quarterback's drop, he is on the fence line and able to play both vertical and horizontal space at that moment in time. So if he's above 4 yards of cushion threshold vertically, he's now in a dominant position to cap vertical space, but uncap horizontal space. So that's the strength and weakness. So a plus 4-yard cushion, we know the strength, we know the weakness. Negative 4 yards of cushion is the inverse. If he has a negative cushion vertically, he's now in a dominant position to close on horizontal space, but negative vertically. And so that is a huge tell to me on what style of concepts and routes I need to use to attack that guy. And the last piece of information is closure. Closure is the ultimate thing to grade. Closure is the ability of that defender to recover a bad position or to recover a bad hip angle or alignment. And so we can measure his closure rate on route space after a break. And so what we're doing is we're measuring the defense's break and drive in relation to the receiver's break and drive on a route or the break and drive of the quarterback's throw. Because the DB is using something as a trigger, right? He's either looking at the quarterback and triggering on his break of his hands and the drive of the ball out, or he's looking at the receiver and triggering on the break and drive of the receiver's break. And so how he matches that or beats that or is behind that, positive, neutral, negative, helps us determine his overall ability to cover that space. That's like the final confirmation. So if you see a lot of negative closure grades for a particular defender, man, we got to center our whole game plan around this guy, right? Conversely, if we see a lot of positive closures, we've got to stay away from those routes, and he's your double move guy. So the thing about this, I think, as coaches, well, we're able to get there and watch film and get to that same result, but can you get there faster? I mean, that's the problem is like it used to, it'd take me 3 to 4 to 5 hours, or maybe on a Wednesday, I'm finally feeling good about these routes against that guy. Well, I can feel good now on a Sunday after 2 hours of watching film instead of 10. Right? I think that's the thing. And then furthermore, I can distill this process down to my players and now empower them to see the game through the same lens I am. And man, you talk about how excited our players now to watch film. I mean, it's like, coach, they turn in their grading card to me. Here's the 5 routes we need against number 11 and 22. And they're carrying that grading card with them all week, and they cannot wait, right, for those routes. And you talk about just a huge level up from a play calling standpoint of like feeling confident to call plays now. It's because you see how jacked your players are and how confident they are. So, I mean, that's kind of what you're going to get with this process. And it's not just for pass game, it's run game too. But again, we're focused on the pass here. So,
yeah.
Morning decisions. A creamy mocha frappuccino drink? A sweet vanilla? Maybe a smooth caramel or that white chocolate mocha. Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Start your day with bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drinks. Pick up a bottle near you wherever you buy your groceries.
Look around. You can find cars like these on AutoTrader, like that car right in your tail. Or if you're tailgating right now, all those cars doubling as kitchens and living rooms are on AutoTrader too. Are you working out and listening to this ad at the same time? Well, multitasking pro, cars like the ones in the gym parking lot are for sale on AutoTrader. New cars, used cars, electric cars, maybe even flying cars. Okay, no flying cars, but as soon as they get invented, they'll be on AutoTrader. Just you wait. AutoTrader.
I think the important thing is behind it. I think you and I have talked about this several times, the language, right? That language opens the door for everything in the understanding. So it doesn't matter if your quarterback's watched 87 hours of film over the course of the week. I mean, he got it right away. He has it on that card. He understands that language of the things that he saw. Now it's more memorable. It's cemented in his mind that this is what we're going to see. This is how we're going to attack it. You know, that language you've created unlocks a lot of things, and that's where this becomes really useful to players. You know, there's something you mentioned too, and just being able to know this in a limited amount of clips. We have those situations where we get that exchange film and they're not running what we're running, or we don't see a single formation or maybe even play type like we do. Maybe you saw an option team against them or a wing T team, and you're not those things. There's still a lot in taking this approach that you can learn about those defenders. Maybe you're not going to know exactly how they might align to you in certain formations, but you know how certain defenders are going to play different types of blocks, how they're going to play different types of coverages. And so that film where maybe you were discarding it before still can tell you quite a bit.
Yeah, that's one of the things I have in the course is for the setup of the course, I used a half a game of scout film we received from a scrimmage before that week 0 game, because that's like the worst, right?
Yeah.
You got 25 clips of scrimmage film. It's like, how am I going to take this and make anything out of it? Or you have that wing T team, you know, the defense you're going against next week is playing a wing T offense or a triple option and you're spread. It's like, that's the worst situation to be in. And we were just like, okay, well, we can't watch film this week. Well, now what I try to tell coaches and help them get to understand is watching game film and grading game film is like trying to go to a crime scene and solve the crime. Some crime scenes have a ton of evidence, right? You have the fingerprints, you have the footprints, you have the murder weapon, and you know exactly what the perp did and who did it. And the crime solved. That's like watching a defense from scout film against an offense just like yours with similar personnel, right? That's the perfect world. What about the imperfect world where the team that you're watching, it doesn't have an offense that's anywhere remotely close to you? That's like going into a crime scene and there's no fingerprints, there's no footprints, there's no murder weapon. I mean, it's a clean scene and it looks like a murder-suicide, right? I mean, that's what expert forensic detectives understand, is never underestimate the amount of information you can glean just from one little piece of information. And that's the same thing I tell coaches with film. Like every offense, no matter what it is going to have a base block, a down block, an out block, a reach block, a double team in some sort of capacity. And we can grade a defender's ability to attack that block no matter what the offense. Same for the pass game. I may only have 5 clips of passes on a film I'm breaking down because they're a wing T team. But that receiver's running a deep post, and I can gauge how that corner is going to play that deep post in a sub-second world from that clip. And that's what we try to show in the course is how you can extract so much information to confirm if your plays are going to work against a guy in just a few clips.
Yeah, incredible in what you put together. I think very useful to coaches. I want to dig into a little more before we go about what's in there. But the other thing you and I have been looking at and worked on and given some input into is Modern Football Technologies quarterback grading app. And looking at that fits very well. If you are an R4 coach, if you run R4 passing concepts, incredibly useful to the coach, from little things like the timer being built right into the iPad where I'm, at the beginning of play as I'm watching it, I don't even need a stopwatch. I got it right there. It's recording the time for me. I'm able to go through and evaluate decision making. I'm able to evaluate, was he on rhythm? All the things that you look for in grading a quarterback.
Yeah, Christian and Jordan, those guys, good friends and done a great job and love collaborating with you and them. So for me, one of the issues is, especially this happens now more than ever, Keith, is like quarterback competitions, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like it's awful to be a quarterback coach and OC, and especially in today's game when everybody's transferring in and out and you have these competitions going on spring and summer 7-on-7. Well, as a coach, how do you be fair? The parent meetings are coming, right? I mean, just whoever doesn't start, just get ready for, if you have 4 quarterbacks in the room, get ready for 3 parent meetings as soon as you name the starter. And it's not going to go well no matter what you do. But at the end of the day, I want to make sure I have data to show why that decision was made. And so the problem is it's strenuous to make grading sheets and like watch film, and you got to grade 4 guys every rep and be accurate. That's very challenging. This app like changes that. I mean, I can be in practice, have the iPad, man, just hitting a button. And after the practice, I got a clean report on what Timmy, Tommy, Jimmy, and Johnny all did. And I can log it. I can show them, okay, here's why you're ranked where you're at today. And then when that meeting comes, here's why Timmy is number 4, right? He's got a 37% completion percentage, on every throw he's made the last 2 weeks. So again, I think that if you just look at just, validity for one reason to have it, that's a huge one.
Yeah, and that's just one simple aspect of it too. When you look at, again, because one, now you have this efficiency. I mean, I went through and I set up a quarterback grading system. I probably wrote the article about it a decade ago now. And we were utilizing kind of a hybrid of ARF / what Dan Gonzalez was doing, consulting with both of you guys. But ARF was definitely the language we were using with the quarterbacks. And we wanted to evaluate how well they were operating within the system, not just completions, but things like, is this guy throwing checkdowns all the time, and that's why his completion rate is high? How many of his passes is he hitting on those read routes downfield, where the throw and the catch are getting most of the explosiveness for him? Or is he hitting rhythm routes, right? And then looking at what this has been able to do, and a lot of it, kind of have a case study with AJ Smith and what he did in the UFL and using it to pick his quarterback, is that it starts to inform you not just on your quarterback play, but a little bit about what you're doing as a play caller. And as you dig into it, really how your offense is performing as it's set up. I mean, maybe you start to find a dead route. Like, man, we've not thrown this at all. And why? Looking at the things you look at, it can help you get to the why a lot faster than if you're just sitting here and charting things and then coming up with the spreadsheet that, okay, here's the data. Dig into it, and everything's tied together through the technology. We have some of those hidden insights that will surface right away and help us to develop our quarterbacks.
Yeah, no, it's a great tool, man. It's just going to get better.
Yeah, it's exciting. I know we were together at AFCA and looking at it then, and it's really version 2 of it is already out. Great interface, very simple to use. I think tablets are the way to go. If you got to sit there and type things in, like, you're really slowing yourself down. So, and that was a big process for me when I would grade those quarterbacks, is sitting, putting everything in, man, stopwatch right here. And then I got to record it. Like, everything is right there in the app. So I highly recommend coaches check that out as well. So let's dig into the package and what these guys get when they sign up for your film watching mastery course.
Yeah, the first thing you get, so you're going to get, this is a newly reformatted game plan pad. So, I'm kind of showing a picture here. So one of the things we did is on the top of our grading grid. So this is the R4 offensive formational grids. That's a 16 box, basically if-then process to strategize and link up play calls, right? The problem I had was like, well, how can I extract the defensive coordinator's play call patterns? Everybody talks about offensive tendencies, Keith, but nobody talks about defensive coordinator tendencies.
Right.
Right. And so that's something that I was like, I need a framework. I need some guardrails to help try to identify defensive coordinator play call tendencies, because a lot of defensive coordinators are emotional, right? And those motions can lead to extreme patterns if you know what to look for. And so we took that same rhythm, read, rush, release framework and we put it over the framework for the offensive grids. And now every game plan, I'm going to come away and I'm going to ID, what's the rhythm play call for this coordinator? What's his caps play call? What's his coverage, alignment, pressure, and stunt call? He may not have a pressure and stunt, but if he does, I have a box to fill that in with. And now I can tie my base call to that base call. I can go tempo because I know he's going to get into that base check, and here's the calls I like. And then his read call is going to be his changeup, right? It's going to be his counter strike move. Is he going to go from an under to an over, or an over to an under? Is he going to go from, cover 2 to 2 Tampa because he knows his weakness is the middle? So he's going to try to bait your quarterback to throw that middle hole shot. And so that allows me to kind of find that pattern if it's there. If it's not, I just go on. I don't need plays for that. Then his rush play, every coordinator is going to have a rush play call. He's going to have an overload. He's going to have a load the box, bring 6 or 7, or he's going to have an overload aside with a zone blitz, slant the line away. He's going to have something when you're chipping off first downs, something he's going to do to overload aside. Well, we need answers for that. And so that allows me to pinpoint those calls. And then he's going to have a one-off. It could be a third down simulated pressure, an exotic, a corner hammer, but that's his release call. So the challenge is I try to have answers for everything. But when you look at the military, hey, it's the 3 to 4 things that matter most. And so by having this defensive caps grid allows me to streamline my play call decisions much faster, and it just stacks on top. So I think that's a cool thing that you're going to get now with this newly formulated pad. On the back, you have just a normal 8-box grid. And so when you have it laid on your desk, you can easily see here's the ancillary calls or the plays I like to string together. So everything is linked on the one page, and it allows you to basically storyboard your game plan like you're telling a bedtime story to your 5-year-old. All right. So that's what they're going to get with that. All right. Now, the next thing you're going to get is what we call grading cards. You're going to get 50 run accelerator grade cards and pass accelerator grade cards. And so each card, you have a chance to grade up to 6 clips. And each card has the non-negotiables written on there. And you're going to give a plus, minus, or neutral grade for those 4. And we're going to teach you how to watch film actively instead of passively. And this is where you're going to reveal the micro patterns of what you're seeing on film to confirm if the plays you drew up on your scratch pad are going to work. Right. So that's the 3-step process. So it's like, okay, let's fill in here. Okay, what are the tendencies we're seeing? What's the plays we think we like? And then let's grade with the grading cards. And then let's get a staff meeting here and let's confirm if these plays on the game plan pad are going to actually hold up. Because that 6 technique that we want to run pin pull against, Keith, had a positive penetration every snap. Right. And so I don't want to call pin pull 3 times in the game and get negative yards before I figure out, well, that play's not going to work. I need to find that out now with the scout film I have in front of me so we can get to a better rhythm play call and stay in rhythm. So that's what they're going to get. The third thing they're going to get is a 12-module course that just takes you step by step and walks you through with game film our process. You're going to get a grading sheet. You're going to get our huddle coverage columns, and you're going to get actual live game film with me taking you through how I would do it if I was sitting with you on a Saturday, Sunday, and then all the way to Friday. So again, 3-hour plus course with all the tools. You're going to walk away with a whole new lens and a way to see the game. And I'm so excited about it.
Yeah, I love it, Dub, and I appreciate you coming on and sharing that, giving us some ideas here on insight into film grading. Certainly, we look forward to having you back, and you're always coming up with new things, and you're definitely in a deep research phase right now with where you're at this year.
Yeah, I might need to text you for SOS to throw me a line because I'm way down the hole, man.
Yeah. Dub, always great to see you. And again, thanks for taking the time.
Thanks, Keith.
Thank you again for listening to the Coaching Coordinator podcast. Be sure to check out our sponsor, Modern Football Technology, and their QB grading app. Go to modernfootball.com and book a demo there. All the links to Dub's resources are in the show notes. Be sure you check out his new course on film watching mastery, which we covered today. Follow all we're doing at coachingcoordinator.com and follow us on X at Coach K. Grabowski.